Anthropic just changed the AI game. Here's what nobody is saying about it. On August 11th, 2026, Anthropic published a quiet support page on the Claude website. It did not get the headlines it deserved, and most of the coverage that did appear got the story wrong in exactly the same direction. So today I want to explain what actually happened, why it matters far more than most people realize, and what it means for you. Whether you use Claude, whether you write for a living, or whether you simply care about where the internet is heading. Because this decision touches something much bigger than a single AI company's product update, and once you understand the real implications, you will see AI content and AI tools in a fundamentally different way. Here is what Anthropic announced. Starting August 2nd, 2026, Claude models embed invisible watermarks into every piece of text they generate. This is a global policy, with no opt-out, driven primarily by the EU AI Act's Article 50, which mandates transparency for AI outputs. The watermark is not a tag attached to the document. It is not a hidden character you could find with a text search. Instead, it changes the source of randomness used when Claude selects words during generation. AI models work by choosing among candidate words each time they generate a token. The watermark biases those choices according to a key held by Anthropic, leaving a pattern that is undetectable to a human reader but detectable to anyone who has access to that key. For images and other files, Claude attaches cryptographically signed C2PA provenance metadata, indicating that the file was created or processed with Claude. Let me explain why the technical detail matters. The watermark is not Unicode characters embedded in the text, not metadata in a hidden field, and not a pattern based on statistical likelihood that something sounds like AI. It is the randomness pattern itself, encoded during generation. This means it survives copying, pasting, reformatting, and conversion to plain text. It does not survive a full rewrite or a translation where every word is replaced. And here is the part that has lawyers, academics, and researchers alarmed. A positive detection tells you that Claude may have processed the text. It does not tell you who wrote it. Search engine journal. Search. 2. Read that again. If you ask Claude to check your grammar, the resulting document carries a watermark. If you paste your own writing into Claude and ask for feedback, then incorporate that feedback yourself, the document may carry a watermark. Comms teams using Claude simply to clean up, translate, or format human-drafted press releases could stamp those documents with an AI signature. The marker says Claude was involved. It cannot distinguish between Claude writing your document from scratch and Claude fixing a single spelling error in something you spent 6 months writing. That ambiguity is not an edge case. It is one of the central objections that the announcement immediately triggered. Axios now. Most of the coverage focused on the obvious angle. Students will try to cheat, and now Claude can catch them. That is true, and it is real, and it matters. But I think it is actually the least interesting part of this story, and focusing on it misses the three things that I think are genuinely consequential. The first is the power question. Anthropic now holds the key that detects whether Claude was involved in producing a piece of content. They have said they will offer a detection API, but the details of its implementation are still being worked out. Think about what that means. A private company has unilateral control over the infrastructure that tells you whether a piece of text is AI generated or not. Courts, employers, universities, publishers, and governments that want to use AI detection will be relying on a system where the only people who can interpret the signal are the same people who created it. That is not a criticism of Anthropic specifically. It is a structural observation that applies to any single organization holding this kind of key. We have never collectively decided who should be the arbiter of what counts as AI-generated content. Anthropic made that decision for Claude by default, and most of the coverage this week did not raise the question at all. The second consequence is about the professional landscape for writing, research, and knowledge work. This is where the reaction got most heated, and for good reason. Users voiced strong objections about their own work being marked as AI-generated, the potential for misleading accusations, and a lack of technical implementation details. Consider what this means for someone who uses Claude as a research assistant. You ask Claude to summarize a set of academic papers, you read the summaries, draw your own conclusions, write your own analysis entirely, and then ask Claude to check it for clarity. Your finished work now carries a watermark. If that work is submitted anywhere that uses Anthropic's detection API, it will be flagged as Claude processed. Whether that constitutes AI-generated content, in the way most people mean the phrase is genuinely contested, and the watermark cannot resolve the contest. It can only record that Claude touched the document at some point. The gap between Claude touched this and AI wrote this is where a lot of professional reputations could get caught. There is an alternative that some researchers have been pushing for. Open, standardized watermarking infrastructure governed publicly, where the detection key is held by a neutral party and the methodology is open to audit. That is a harder coordination problem, and it probably cannot be solved by individual companies. It requires governments or international bodies to step in. Whether they will is genuinely uncertain. But the window for making that happen is closing, because the more each company builds out its own proprietary detection system, the harder it becomes to replace with something open and shared. The third consequence is the one that I think matters most long-term, and it is almost entirely absent from the coverage I have seen. This watermarking decision is happening at a specific moment. Now, the EU AI Act has come into force. Other jurisdictions are watching and will follow. And Anthropic is not the only major AI provider. Anthropic signed the EU Code of Practice on Transparency of AI-Generated Content in July 2026, along with several other major AI model providers, and around 190 total signatories. OpenAI and Google are in this framework too, which means we're at the beginning of a period where the major AI companies are building, each independently, the infrastructure to detect and label AI-generated content with different technical approaches, different keys, different detection APIs, and different policies about who gets access. What we are going to end up with, unless something changes the trajectory, is a fragmented detection landscape, where the answer to "was this AI generated" depends entirely on which company's tool you use, each of which has its own incentives and blind spots. There is an alternative that some researchers have been pushing for: open, standardized watermarking infrastructure, governed publicly, where the detection key is held by a neutral party and the methodology is open to audit. That is a harder coordination problem, and it probably cannot be solved by individual companies. It requires governments or international bodies to step in. Whether they will is genuinely uncertain. But the window for making that happen is closing, because the more each company builds out its own proprietary detection system, the harder it becomes to replace with something open and shared. So what does this actually mean for you practically? 3 things. First, if you use Claude in any professional context, understand what the watermark does and does not tell a detector. It records involvement, not authorship. If your work is going anywhere that might be AI detected, know that using Claude, even for light editing, now leaves a trace. That is not a reason to stop using it. It is a reason to be clear in your own mind, and where relevant to others, about what role Claude plays. Second, pay attention to the detection API when it launches. Who has access, on what terms, at what cost, and with what accuracy rate are questions that will determine how this technology gets used in practice. The answers are not settled yet. Third, this story is a preview of a bigger one. The question of how we distinguish human from AI-generated content, who has the authority to make that determination, and what consequences flow from being labeled one or the other, is going to be one of the defining policy questions of the next decade. Anthropic's announcement this week is the first large-scale, real-world deployment of a serious answer. It will not be the last, and the answers that come next will be shaped by how this one lands. Here is the honest summary. Anthropic did something technically significant and legally required, and they implemented it more thoughtfully than the headline coverage suggested. The watermark is real, it is durable in most use cases, and it is a genuine step toward the transparency the EU AI Act is asking for. The unanswered questions are not about whether the technology works. They are about who controls it, what it actually proves, and whether the governance model we are drifting toward by default is the one we would choose if we were making the decision deliberately. Those questions do not have good answers yet, and that is exactly why they are worth asking. That is what this channel is for, not explaining what happened, explaining what it means and what is still unresolved. If that is useful, subscribe and hit the bell, because we do this every week. And I want to hear your reaction to this one in the comments, because the response has been genuinely divided, and I think the division is interesting. Did Anthropic get this right? See you in the next video.